Ian's voice broke on the high note of the climax. The note he'd practiced for days didn't come out right. He rushed off stage, knowing he'd let everyone down. I wanted to give it my 120%, but I only managed to show about 40. Stray Kids placed last with the judges. This is Kingdom Legendary War, and this is what it took for Stray Kids to prove they belonged. Kingdom's officially considered to be a survival show, and while most survival shows test whether you can make it to the end, Kingdom tested something different. 6 of the top boy groups in K-pop, B2B, iKON, SF9, The Boys, ATEEZ, and Stray Kids, competing across 4 rounds of performances. No eliminations, no one going home, just the pressure of proving yourself when the only thing at stake is whether you even deserve to stand alongside groups you used to watch as trainees. For Stray Kids, this was their first time competing as a complete team. They'd survived their own show and debuted, but Kingdom was different. The senior groups in the room carried years of experience Stray Kids didn't have yet, and all of them recognized that. When they first sat down together, they were immediately filled with nerves. B2B helped break that ice, showing the kind of warmth that only comes from senior artists who've been through it all before. B2B understands what Stray Kids are feeling, but even with that kindness, Han admits he feels small in their presence, with Bangchan agreeing. At this point, it wasn't just about their skills. Stray Kids were facing several groups who'd already proven themselves. Stray Kids hadn't, at least not yet, and so they got to work. The first stage was an introduction performance. Each group had 100 seconds and 1 song to establish why they deserved to be here. It would also be live streamed on YouTube, where global fans would vote for their favorite. The winner would receive 1,000 bonus points and the right to decide the performance order for the next round. However, that was the only thing Stray Kids had in mind at this point. It wasn't about ranking high, they either win or they lose. Stray Kids chose to perform Miro, the same song that led to their first music show win. If you want to see more videos about Stray Kids, make sure to subscribe. I'm planning on making a lot more very soon, so you don't want to miss it. Now back to Kingdom. Practices had already been underway, but on February 20th, after their fan meeting ended, they went straight to the studio. There wasn't any time to rest in between. They needed to get the specialized choreography down. The best break they got during this time was traveling back to JYP Entertainment. By 3:53 in the morning, they were still rehearsing. Han pointed out the time on camera, half laughing at how late it had gotten. 3 days before the performance, and they were still getting the choreography down. The latest timestamp we see is 5:17 AM, though they likely went even later than that. The night before the livestream, February 22nd into the 23rd, they practiced until 7 AM. Rehearsals were rough. Hyunjin didn't stick his flip. Lino lost his karambit during a rotation. Bangchan missed his flip entirely. They all kept going, but it was clear they needed to improve quickly. There was no time left to just take their time and figure it out later. The pressure was especially heavy for Felix. He made 4 mistakes during rehearsal, and each one stayed in his head. He was incredibly nervous about whether he could pull it off when it mattered. One of the mistakes could also injure Han, so on top of the pressure of doing well, he was worried about hurting his friend. This is when Bangchan pulled him aside. Let go of your thoughts. Don't think so much. Today, you just need to do it. The performance day finally arrived, and Seungmin had been nervous since he woke up that morning. Han noticed his eyes shaking and joked that he needed magnesium, while Chongmin checked in on him, asking if he was okay. Seungmin said he was good, but the tension was written all over him. Even in the final moments before stepping on stage, they were still drilling practice. However, despite their worries, despite their exhaustion, they stepped up into the center of the stage. The lights directed toward them, the horn blasted, and Felix had to trust himself. The jump move that caused him so much trouble came up fast. If he got it wrong, Han would get hurt, and the performance would fall flat. He couldn't hesitate here. He launched himself straight into it, and he nailed it. Perfect timing, perfect execution. He made it to his next mark exactly when he needed to, where Hyunjin nailed his flip as well. The chorus comes in, and Bangchan hits his key moment excellently. The other groups thought it was amazing. SF9 felt inspired by it. Stray Kids' use of props, the glowing eyes, karambits, the spark emitter, it all set them apart immediately. Afterward, Felix said it felt like he finally got something off his chest. Stray Kids were able to assert their power early on, and clarified exactly why they're allowed to be competing here. When the votes came in, Stray Kids won first place, receiving 690,971 global votes. They were shocked. They genuinely didn't expect to actually win, and they immediately felt what it actually meant. Stays gave them this position. Now they had to guard it.
1등 하고 싶어요. 진짜. 1등 하려고 나가는 거예요.
The second round was titled To the World. Each group would perform their representative songs, rearranged for Kingdom's stage, with the goal of sending a message to the world. After Stray Kids' Miro performance, Hyunjin went on hiatus amid allegations from when he was just a middle schooler. Because of that, he would be absent for the remainder of Kingdom, with the group continuing as 7 members. The other groups were curious what Stray Kids would bring. Stray Kids were determined to show even more this time, especially in Hyunjin's honor. They decided to combine God's Menu and Side Effects into a single performance. It was a bold choice. God's Menu had already been performed in several different arrangements for end of year stages. Lena was especially wary of repeating themselves. They needed to give something fresh. The concept they came up with was ambitious. In Side Effects, they expressed being controlled by shadowed figures, and in God's Menu, they flip it. They took control of the shadows instead. The choreography leaned heavily into acting and expression rather than just technical precision, and that made it difficult in a new way. Bangchan took charge of rearranging the 2 songs together, wanting to bring out a darker side of Side Effects when mixed with God's Menu. However, Stray Kids were struggling to piece together what story they wanted to tell. That's when Wooyoung of 2PM stopped by the practice room with snacks and drinks. Bangchan mentioned how they were stuck on the concept and couldn't quite make it stick. Wooyoung's advice to them was simple but effective. Forget reminding yourselves of certain things on stage. Engrave it on your hearts. Wooyoung watched a past run-through and said it looked so good he didn't know who could beat it. The reassurance certainly helped Stray Kids. They felt significantly more confident moving forward, but the exhaustion was still building. Just like the introduction stage, they were staying up late, squeezing as much practice time as they could into every available hour. With how much was at stake, they couldn't waste a single minute. If they wanted to win, they had to put all of their time into it. They warmed up as the final stage approached. However, their nerves were even worse this time around. The thought of letting Stay down after the support they gave them last round terrified them. They were so anxious that Lino and Changbin joked that they should have chosen to go later in the order just to push the performance off as long as possible. Stray Kids finally stepped on stage again. Their message was about the evil that tries to control you, being kicked to the ground and tossed around, but standing above it all. Stray Kids took the message literally too. When you flip evil, you get live, and in order to live, you must first change up the evil surrounding you. The performance itself was striking. iKON, a veteran group, praised their ingenious ideas. The boys praised their acting, something Stray Kids especially tried to bring out. When the results came in, Stray Kids came first overall, but because the performance wasn't live streamed, they finished the day ranking 2nd. Bangchan was happy, really happy. He didn't even care about where they placed this time. He was just so relieved to have had so much fun on the stage. He even calls it one of the performances he has 0 regrets about. However, Han looked at it differently. Coming in 2nd means one more stair to climb up. Placing 2nd would usually be pretty exciting, but for Stray Kids, it wasn't enough. If they want to win, they can't just be the 2nd best.
저희가 좀 더 열심히 해서 또 이제 멋지게 좀 반전 드라마를 쓸 수 있지 않을까요?
At this point, they could compete powerfully. That was more than obvious. But they weren't certain they belonged yet. The 3rd round was called Reborn. Each group would swap songs with another and reinterpret the music into their own style. Stray Kids selected B2B. They believed B2B had several songs that could be completely reborn with Stray Kids colors, and later, they chose to perform Pray. Rearranging the song to fit Stray Kids' style ended up being a difficult task for 3RACHA. Han and Changbin were getting tired while writing new lyrics late at night. Han joked that he wanted to run away. Changbin hoped the lyrics would be finished in his dream. However, they pushed through. As strange as it sounds, they didn't have enough time to just waste around trying to perfect the song. They had people waiting on them to finish it up. After the press conference for Kingdom Legendary War, 3RACHA met up with B2B. They were genuinely excited to hear what 3RACHA had done with their song. They gave B2B a very brief sneak peek at the rearrangement. 3RACHA had shifted the song's target from a romantic love interest to anyone dear to you. like family, friends, basically the people you'd sacrifice for. While 3RACHA worked out the song, the rest of Stray Kids went and made rings and engraved them with the names of the members and stay, tying directly into the concept. Stray Kids wanted to show off their vocal capabilities this time, but the song was very demanding. Praise sits incredibly high. Han admitted he'd never sung such a difficult song in his life, and on top of that, his throat wasn't in good condition. "I've got vocal cord nodules," he said quietly during practice. "I should go to the hospital as soon as possible so I can get better quickly." But he didn't stop. He kept rehearsing, trying to hit the notes required for the performance, despite the pain. Seungmin managed to hit the note when they recorded the song, but for Ian, the emotions of the song weren't coming through the way they needed to. Bangshan and Changbin worked with him, encouraging him and helping him strike the right emotional tone. He kept reviewing his part over and over, worried about not being able to fully deliver what he was capable of. As they were running through the song, someone suggested they needed more energy in the latter part of the song, particularly during Changbin's fast rap section. So Bangshan immediately went to edit the track, adjusting the rhythm and adding more to pull the section forward. He saved it quickly and rushed back down to the practice room so they could try it with the new version. The performance was massive, so large they needed to rent out an entire gymnasium just to run through it properly. Even on performance day, Ian was still refining his part. The pressure was overtaking him. He knew how high the note was. He knew how much emotion he needed to convey. He'd practiced it so many times. He was hitting it correctly. He just had to do it one more time when it mattered the most. But then it happened. Right when everyone had their eyes on him, right when the song was coming to its climax, Ian's voice cracked. The note he was so worried about didn't come out right. He looked devastated, frozen in guilt over his mistake. He rushes off the stage as soon as it ends. He's fighting off tears as he takes his microphone off.
되게 라이브 연습을 많이 했는데 생각했던 것보다 잘 안 나와가지고 120%를 보여주고 싶었는데 한 40% 보여준 느낌이에요. 조금 저 때문에 무대가 조금 많이.
Bangshan found him immediately and reminded him he did good even when Ian thought he bombed everything. Just think of this as a phase you need to grow through. As long as you don't do it again next time, right? Besides, I made heaps of mistakes too. The boys respected how involved Stray Kids were in the creative process. They noted it was already difficult just to prepare the routine and perform it, but Stray Kids were doing everything, producing, arranging, and directing. But the results were devastating. Stray Kids placed last with the expert judges. They scored higher in the self-assessments, but only 5th place. It was the lowest they'd scored in any round. They were totally shocked. But despite the disappointment, Stray Kids made a promise. They promised to grit their teeth, be more tenacious, and go for the win next time. They may have lost this round, but they still had room to win it all. Then came No Limit. The premise was pretty straightforward, removing all prior restrictions. However, it was split into 2 parts. The first part involved sorting the 6 groups into 2 larger teams. ATs, having won the previous round, got to choose their teammates. They picked B2B and Stray Kids, forming Team Mayfly. Each team would divide into 3 units, rap, dance, and vocal, based on their individual specialties. The units would battle head-to-head. The winning unit in each category would earn 5,000 points to split amongst their teams. For Stray Kids, this was the first time they'd be performing not as a team, and surprisingly, it became one of the most meaningful parts of Kingdom. B2B's Minhyuk and AT's Hongjung met 3RACHA at JYP Entertainment to work on the rap performance. Before their guests arrived, Bangshan mentioned it would be good to brainstorm together, and as soon as Minhyuk sat down, he immediately said the same thing. They clicked instantly. Bangshan showed them a concept he'd been working on, playing with colors. Changbin thought a fun, witty performance would draw people's attention. The others loved it. The energy in the production room was electric as they figured out the song together. All 5 of them connected through their shared love for music and writing. Working with 3RACHA and Hongjung reminded Minhyuk how to enjoy making music again. The 5 of them even came up with a unit name, dubbing themselves 5RACHA, and then when they performed, the other teams loved it. The song stuck with them even after they left the stage. Members from different groups couldn't stop making the hand gestures and chanting the chorus. 5RACHA won the rap battle with 23 out of the 33 votes, earning 5,000 points to split. But the points weren't what mattered most to Han. Rather, it was coming together as a team for the rap performance that made him feel like he's doing all that he wanted to on Kingdom. This was different from the pressure of representing Stray Kids as a full group. They didn't feel a heavy weight of trying to carry the group's reputation. They were just 5 rappers connecting over their love for music. Minhyuk and Hongjoong saw the ambition, the skill, and the way 3RAJA operated. Working with them directly revealed what was actually going on inside the group. And while the world might not have recognized Stray Kids as the S-class group they'd become years later, Minhyuk and Hongjoong absolutely saw it in this moment. They understood what 3RAJA was capable of and where they'd go in the future. The dance unit met at KQ Entertainment. Lino, Felix, and Ian represented Stray Kids, joined by Penyel from B2B and 5 members of ATEEZ. They chose EXO's Wolf because of its distinct concept and demanding choreography. Lino took on a teaching role naturally. He led Felix and Ian through the choreography, pointing out the small details they didn't notice at first.
조금 더 생각해. 가슴도 붕붕붕 같이 써줘.
He was patient, but precise. When Ian struggled with connecting movements, Lino broke it down further. For Ian, who'd been devastated by his voice crack in the last performance, Lino's steady guidance was exactly what he needed. Ian didn't need pity. He didn't need lowered expectations. All he needed was patient teaching that reminded him he was still capable of representing Stray Kids. Lino also decided they should practice while wearing heavy clothes so they could build more strength. It was harder that way, but it would make the real performance feel easier. Following their performance, Lino mentioned how he expected working with other groups to be awkward, but it wasn't. He says he was surprised when it turned out to be very meaningful and fun, and that he's very happy to have made some great friends. Mayfly won the dance battle with 22 out of 33 votes, with the other Stray Kids members shooting up from their seats in excitement. Mayfly had now won both the rap and the dance battle. The chemistry these 3 groups had together truly was undeniable. There was only one battle left. The vocal unit met at Cube Entertainment. Seungmin represented Stray Kids alongside B2B's Eunkwang and ATEEZ Jongho. They wanted to create a performance that could provide a slice of comfort to the listeners. When it came time to choose a song, Seungmin recommended IU's Love Poem. Eunkwang was blown away, as he was just about to suggest the exact same song. For Seungmin, this was everything. It's always been my dream to work with the main vocalists of other groups, visiting them in their rehearsal rooms, chatting with them, and building memories with them. Before the performance, Seungmin was full of anxiety. He paced around the green room, unable to sit still, but once he stepped on stage, something shifted. The judges were on the edge of their seats throughout the entire performance. The entire audience was hooked by just how beautifully they performed. When it ended, Seungmin was asked for a comment. He'd just performed his dream collaboration, singing alongside the main vocalist he'd always admired. He'd been so nervous he couldn't stop pacing moments before, and now it was over. He says that it served as a reminder to him that he truly loves music. Not that he hoped he did well, not that he was relieved it was finished, just the simple fact of how after all the anxiety, what stayed with him the most was remembering why he started in the first place. Then the results came in. Mayfly received all 33 votes, a perfect score. The other Stray Kids members were so impressed, they couldn't stop talking about it. Bangshan kept gushing about how well they'd done. These unit stages did something the main rounds couldn't. They forced Stray Kids to stand alone, not as a self-made group with the survival show backstory, but as individual rappers, dancers, and vocalists who had to prove their skills directly against senior artists. And they did. The validation wasn't just that Stray Kids could compete as a group, it was that each member belonged in their field, not as rising trends, but as artists who'd earned their place. And because Mayfly won all 3 unit battles, Stray Kids, B2B, and ATEEZ each earned 5,000 points to carry into the second part of the round. Now, Stray Kids just need to keep the momentum up in the second part of No Limit. They return to their original groups. With the rules thrown completely out the window, they decided to mash up Blackpink's Do 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 with their own God's Menu, playing on the similar lyrics of the song. As for the concept, it incorporated Deadpool and various Marvel elements, with Felix dressed as Deadpool himself. The idea here was that Deadpool's witty, goofy style kinda paralleled Stray Kids' own energy. The entire goal of the performance was having fun and being playful with music. 3RAJA worked on the mashup from about 7:33 p.m. until 5:54 in the morning. basically 10 hours straight. They were evidently exhausted, but yet, just like before, they understood they had to get the song done. However, even 3 Racha have limits. The whole time, Han was falling asleep. As the night went on, even Changbin started fighting drowsiness on the couch. It was at nearly 6 a.m. that Bingxian looked at the time and acknowledged that'd have to be it for today. Even though there was more that still needed to be done, he understood that it'd be impossible to continue the way they are currently. As much as they try, they can't outrun the necessity of sleep. The concept was bold, covering one of the biggest girl group songs in K-pop and making it their own, not to mention the fact that one of the members would be on set that day to see it, unbeknownst to Stray Kids at the time. But Stray Kids had already proven they could handle pressure. Now they were proving they could take risks. When they performed, iKON's Bobby praised them immediately.
참 넥스트 제너레이션답게 넥스트 스텝을 밟지 않았나.
Coming from such a veteran group, that validation was huge. Bobby was acknowledging what Stray Kids represented. They were a shift in what K-pop could be. Stray Kids placed first with the experts, earning the most points overall in the round. After global fan votes were added, they won with 6,999 points, the highest score of any group. And then came the finale. Stray Kids were to perform a brand new song, Wolfgang. The final stage had a whopping 50,000 points available. Everything they'd worked toward across 4 rounds came down to this. Stray Kids even rented out a gymnastics stadium just to practice. The scale of the performance was massive. During a break, Han and Felix reflected on how fast Kingdom had flown by. It felt like just yesterday they were nervous artists sitting in a room with B2B, iKON, and SF9, senior groups they'd looked up to as trainees. Now they were here, preparing a finale stage on an equal level to them. They'd been through the mistakes, the devastation of placing last, the validation of the unit stages, and the exhaustion of 5 a.m. production sessions. All of it had led to this moment, one final performance to prove everything they'd been fighting for. Before the finale, the group split up for a day to refresh. Some of them went to the mountains, others went to an arcade, while Han made coffee. It was a nice, slow moment for them before the highly anticipated finale, the round that would decide the kings of K-pop, the round that would decide whether Stray Kids win or lose. Stray Kids' fate would be decided live on June 3rd. Bingxian was planning to take his top off during the performance, something that was guaranteed to be a highlight. Because he wanted the moment to be as powerful as possible, he went on a strict diet the week prior. He tracked his hydration meticulously. 4 liters until May 31st, 2 liters on June 1st, 1 liter on June 2nd, and then water cut off completely at midnight. He planned every meal down to the gram. IN, who'd been so devastated after Prey, now felt something different about the upcoming stage. I know I should be humble, but I feel confident about our performance. I'm ready for the finale. Thanks to Lino and the other members, he'd come a long way from the person who rushed off stage in tears. On the final day, Felix baked cookies and brought them to share with everyone. It felt like a quiet send-off to Kingdom, as one member from each group came together for a final performance. Even though it was technically a competition, it was moments like this that showed how the Kingdom also gave the group space to connect with one another. Later, when they finally stepped on stage and performed Wolfgang, everything came together. The performance opened with Stray Kids emerging as a pack of wolves. All those months back, their intro performance had been wolf-themed. While the theme was similar, they were far from the same. The people back then were nothing like the artists they are now. The choreography they drilled in that rented gymnasium translated incredibly well under the lights. Their energy sucked you in. This wasn't a group hoping to prove something anymore. Stray Kids were moving like they already knew they belonged. Bingxian's shirtless moment hit exactly as he planned. The strict diet, the water cut off, all of it paid off in the end. IN sang with the confidence he'd been building since his voice cracked during Prey. The same member who rushed off stage and blamed himself now held his ground and represented Stray Kids proudly. The stage design was easily one of the most elaborate of the entire competition, but Stray Kids devoured the performance. With the wolf style returning and the raw strength of a brand new song performed for the first time, it was hard to ignore just how powerful Stray Kids were. With all of their points totaled up, the digital play, the live voting, and the prior round results, Stray Kids are announced as the final kings of Kingdom Legendary War. receiving 38,873 points altogether, nearly 15,000 more than second place. The other groups rushed over to congratulate them. Seungmin said he'd take his memories and everything he'd learned and continue to go full throttle. They'd won, but more importantly, they'd grown and proven they belonged. From the very beginning, Stray Kids weren't judged like other teams. They were the self-made group, the one that survived their own show and debuted as a family. Kingdom didn't test whether they could survive. They'd already done that. It tested whether they deserved to stand alongside the senior groups they used to watch as trainees. And the answer came in the work they chose to put in. The 3 a.m. practices after fan meetings, the late night song rearrangements, the voice crack that didn't stop IN from continuing, the gymnasium rentals and meticulous diets, the dreams of collaborating with senior vocalists. None of it was forced. They chose to push this hard because the only thing at stake was proving they belonged. And when they stood on that stage holding the trophy, they weren't just celebrating a win, they were celebrating the validation that they'd earned their place. And what would follow in the next few years would only build onto their king status. If you want to see how Stray Kids were tested in their survival show, you can click the video on screen. Thanks for watching. Bye 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 bye.